His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Or Premanandi Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're going to finish a chapter this morning, chapter 14, Canto 3, text 51. For those of you that are joining us this morning, the speaker has been Kashyapa, speaking to his wife Diti, and the topic here is the pregnancy of Diti in the evening. That's the title of the chapter. At an inauspicious time with an inauspicious motivation, envy of her sister, co-wife of one of the co-wives of Kashyapa. She's just conceived, and Kashyapa is informing her of the bad news and the good news. The bad news is her sons will be demons, and the good news is two good news items. These two sons will be liberated by being killed by Vishnu, and one of the sons, the elder, Hiranyakashipu, will have a son who is a pure devotee, and all the qualifications of Prahlad have been, not all, many of the qualifications of Prahlad have been described. So in this final verse, it's Maitreya speaking. Previously it's Kashyapa speaking, but it's Maitreya speaking about what Kashyapa said. Because going back to earlier part of Canto 3, Maitreya, having heard from Krishna directly, when Krishna spoke Uddhava Gita, which isn't detailed until the 11th canto, but in the 3rd canto, early part it's mentioned, he heard, Maitreya heard, and he became a perfected being. Prior he wasn't. He was a great mystic and Brahmana, but he wasn't a perfected Vaishnava. But he had become, and already very knowledgeable. So Vidura, long story short, Vidura meets him while Vidura was on pilgrimage, having been informed by Uddhava that Krishna said that Vidura would soon come. Vidura should go hear from Maitreya, so he goes to hear from Maitreya. And in his questions, there's wonderful exchange, the qualification of both persons. He starts asking of all things about creation. just the other day, somebody sent a letter saying they've been hearing for the third time the Brahma Samhita seminar, and the third time around they're starting to better understand why it's important to understand creation, because like, it's really detailed. And heck, it's material, right? Material creation. So let's get on to the good stuff. You know, the spiritual realm and what goes on in the spiritual realm. But by hearing and hearing and hearing, this devotee was sharing that I'm now understanding it's really important, like fundamentally important, to achieve self-realization. There has to be detachment from matter, and as long as we're thinking incompletely and wrongly, both, about matter, then we're going to be trying to be the enjoyers of it. And that's a problem for self-realization and God-realization. So I'm starting to appreciate the details and details and details. So, of creation. So that's where Vidura begins. And Vidura, he's not a neophyte. Vidura is, before he went on pilgrimage, when he was living in the royal palace, he was the sage amongst members of the royal palace. He was looked up to as wise Vidura. People looked to him for counsel. So here's Vidura having a chance to meet Maitreya under the instruction of Krishna to go hear from him. He wants to hear about creation. So it's not that he didn't know this and that about creation. He wants to hear from a realized soul because he doesn't want just information, because he already has information. He wants realization, because that comes from hearing from the right source. And the realization is everything comes from one place. Vedanta is searching for what is that one place. So in details and details and details, that one place from which everything comes is Krishna. And it's not just emotional or notional or whimsical. It's very detailed. And then after the source of everything, what Vishnu does, Sarga, comes Visarga. What Vishnu does is set everything up, and Brahma comes and he completes the plan. Like these people are doing back here. A whole lot of work went into making the plan. And then somebody comes in and fills out the plan. That's what Brahma does. Very qualified. You have to not just know how to read plans, you have to know how to put it all together. And it's very complicated. Without going into details. Make a strand of RNA and DNA from nothing. Go ahead. Make a mosquito. Go ahead. So, Brahma is very qualified. And after this sarga, what Brahma does to build the universe, or create the universe, the chief engineer of the universe, he then wants to fill it up. And so he creates directly from his body, as he was born directly from the body of Garbhadakshay Vishnu, and So one of his names is Aja, which means he's not born the way that living entities are normally born. His sons, the first 10, well, not the first 10 sages, of which Kashyapa is one, also born directly from his body. So they can be called Aja too. And so Kashyapa is then awarded with daughters of Daksha, who is one of the 10, and Diti and Aditi are two of those daughters of Daksha. And so in the course of filling up the universe, Aditi bore as children a number of demigods, starting with the sun god, and etc. And Diti is going to bear two demons. And she's being told why. There's consequences for violation of Dharma. Even you're a great soul. She's a great soul. It's described in this section, in the ways in which she is great. And because of those great qualifications, she will receive this benediction of having a grandson who is going to go back to Godhead. And if he goes back to Godhead, similar to Dhruva, she'll go back to Godhead. When Dhruva went back to Godhead, he was saying, wait a minute, I don't want to go without my mother. And the Vishnu Dutta said, look over there. There's Vimana number 2, and she's getting on board with Vimana number 2, and she's going back to Godhead too because of you. So if you want to do some good service for mom and dad, become a pure devotee. Go back to Godhead. So now this is the end of the chapter. Maitreya has been narrating all this, and continuation of the topic of creation. It's not just tell me about creation. There was many, many, many detailed questions, and he's responding systematically. So the last verse of the chapter, the sage Maitreya said, hearing that her grandson would be a great devotee, and that her sons would be killed by Krishna, or Vishnu, Diti was highly pleased in mind. I mean, your sons are going to be killed by Vishnu. But she knows what that means. She's not a negative emotion. It's a positive emotion. Purport. Diti was very aggrieved to learn that because of her untimely pregnancy, her sons would be demons and fight with the Lord. But when she heard that her grandson would be a great devotee and that her two sons would be killed by the Lord, she was very satisfied. As the wife of a great sage and the daughter of a great Prajapati Daksha, she knew that being killed by the personality of Godhead is a great fortune. Since the Lord is absolute, his acts of violence and nonviolence are both on the absolute platform. There is no difference. Of course, there's a difference because there's two terms. But the outcome, there's no difference in such acts of the Lord. Mundane violence and nonviolence have nothing to do with the Lord's acts. A demon killed by him attains the same result as one who attained liberation after many, many births of penance and austerity. The word Brisham is significant herein because it indicates that Diti was pleased beyond her expectations. pleased beyond her expectations. That's the end of the chapter. Thus, and the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 14th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Pregnancy of Diti in the Evening. So a few things. The Lord is absolute. And therefore, whatever he does is absolute. And absolute means a number of things, but one thing is there's no discrepancy or fault, dosha, fault. Everything is quality, divyam, no dosha. Janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tatvataha chakvadeham punar janma naiti mameti. So Arjuna, you not only no more birth, but you go to Krishna. Just by understanding the divyam, the transcendental nature of the Lord's activities, his appearance, and his activities. So, Diti, being, we heard, very qualified, daughter of Daksha, Prajapati Daksha, and more importantly, the wife of Kashyapa. She was very qualified. She accepted, she became gifted with qualities like her husband. This is Vedic culture. And so she knew being killed by Lord Vishnu meant they would be liberated. So they would be liberated. That's good. Born as demons, that's not good. Liberated, that's more than good. It's transcendental. So understanding that consequence, she was very pleased beyond her ordinary, would-be happiness. Transcendental happiness is beyond the other kind, any other kind. Mode of goodness happiness, certainly mode of passion happiness, mode of ignorance happiness, the modes of nature, happiness and the modes of nature described in Bhagavad Gita. And her happiness was beyond the happiness of the modes of nature. Like there's many examples in the Bhagavatam where devotees of the Lord, Prahlad is one of them, where the Lord is offering any benediction you like. And they could say, I want the happiness of heaven. But devotees don't say, pure devotees don't say, I want that happiness or whatever. I want money, I want abundant wealth, something. I want to make sure my son or daughter get a good spouse. Om Jaya Jagadisha Hare, and etc., etc. It's not so, or residents up to Brahmaloka. This is Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, don't aspire, don't take up spiritual practice to get something that's on the temporary platform. So what's beyond the temporary platform? Eternal happiness. And what's eternal happiness? That's this stage of liberation. The whole of the Vedas which means our lives as devotees, as followers of the Vedas. It's meant to take us beyond the cycle of birth and death. People don't know that. Na te vidu. Vid means to know. They don't know. Swa artha gatim hi Vishnu. They don't know that the goal of life is to achieve Vishnu. They don't know. Instead, adanta gobir vishatam tamishram. They glide down, unfortunately, to darker regions of existence, like dropping into a well, searching for water, and there's no water, and they can't get out of the well. It's very unfortunate. That's persons that have a bodily conception of life, not only don't know what the goal of life is, but those that are trying to share with them what the goal of life is, besides they don't get it, they think, okay, teachings, that's nice, but what are you doing to help people? I was in Mayapur one time, attending a yatra, and I was sitting next to somebody during prasadam, visitor, and you know that big hall and got a building. So he looked at me with his attitude and said, "What do Hare Krishna people do to help people? And don't tell me that you give them teachings. What are you doing to help people?" I didn't have time to get into a discussion with him, so I just said, "Over there, there's a prasadam pavilion. We feed all the people in 10-mile range. Oh, that's good. You're doing something to help people." And we're creating jobs for many people because of the income that comes from tourism. So the local people, they now have some jobs so they can feed their families. Oh, very good. And it's not that it's not good. It's good. But that's the external is the measure of good. And teachings don't matter to such a person, to many people. But the real mission of human life is is freedom. Here's another example. Prabhupada, I listened to it 3 times. It was a really good lecture. It was an interview with a Associated Press reporter in New York in July 75. You can look it up later if you like. Man was saying, there were 2 reporters that had the same position. "Swamiji, you're depriving the world of the value that your followers could give to make the world better. They're talented, they're gifted, they're bright, but you're not encouraging them, you're discouraging them. You have all this negativity towards doing good for the world." Swamiji, what do you have to say about that? And Prabhupada said, the man who's in a prison, he's very busy breaking rocks. And somebody else comes into the prison and says, "My dear prisoner, your real life is freedom, not breaking rocks." And the man said, "You're lazy, you're not breaking rocks." So the service of the devotee is to explain to the person who's in prison This isn't your real life. Go ahead and break rocks, but that's not your real life. There's a real life. You don't have to break rocks. Prison life is, you have a sentence. You have to pay for your misdeeds. So break rocks. But that's not your real life. Man couldn't get it. He went over and over and over and couldn't get it. And I mean, because when you have a bodily conception, you can't see beyond the bodily conception. Just can't see. So it's not easy to have people appreciate what's beyond bodily conception. But no, back to our story here. Diti understood. So the liberation for her two sons because they would be killed by Vishnu. And that's Sham. She was pleased beyond her expectations. She's just done something sinful, and she's being told, your sons are going to get liberation. So, doesn't mean go ahead and do something sinful. Because you're a qualified person, so you go ahead and do something sinful. That's not the lesson. But because she's so qualified, it's said specifically, because she's so qualified, her son will be qualified like this, and her sons will be killed by Vishnu and liberated. So now that, just a little bit about that liberation. What kind of liberation? And there's a few things. There's an interesting purport in Chaitanya Charitamrita that says, in the case, there's just three things I'd like to share, and then stop. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, interesting, it's his commentary on that section of the cursing of Jai and Vijay. He says, expansions of Jai and Vijay took birth 3 times. And when those 3 births of those expansions of Jai and Vijay were finished with the curse of the 4 Kumaras, they resumed their position as Jai and Vijay, entering into the expansion, entering into the origin of that expansion. And the third time around was Krishna killed Shishupal and Dantavakra. They then resumed their position in Vaikuntha. That's one thing. And the Chaitanya Charitamrita report, second, says, because they, that's Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, they saw Lord Varaha, Lord Nrsingadev, as a mystic that had some mystic power and assumed some mystical form. They thought, well, I have mystical powers too, and so I'll match mine against yours, see who wins. So they didn't achieve liberation. They were in the go back to Godhead sense of liberation, or Sarupya Mukti. They didn't achieve that. They didn't achieve Sayuja Mukti either. What's Sayuja Mukti? You merge with Brahman. They didn't merge with Brahman. Shishupal did. This purports, no. They went somewhere, and I asked a number of scholars, where? And the answer is, I've not read anything by any of our acharyas that says where, but they went somewhere because the soul doesn't just go hang out nowhere, it goes somewhere. No explanation where. Because some long time passed before it was their next birth and long time passed before it's their next birth. They went somewhere. But the liberation that they achieved was freedom from the reaction of all their past sins. And lots of sins, because that's what Prahlad had asked. That my father be relieved of the reactions for all of his sinful activities. And Lord Nrsimhadev said, it's already done. Because he was killed by me and because he's your father. He's already liberated. He's that kind of liberation, freed from the sins. He was liberated. And that kind, freed from guna and karma. But one can become freed from guna and karma, but still have the seed or the residual tendency for those things. It's in Canto 6, Chapter 1. In Canto 6, Chapter 1, it comes right after Canto 5, where the description of the hellish planets is given. And at the beginning of Canto 6, Chapter 1, Maharaj Parikshit says, oh my God, hellish planets. What can be done to save people for having to suffer the reactions of their past sins? So, prayaschitta is the first thing, this atonement for those sins. And while the response, the correct response, while one may atone for sins and become freed from karma of those sins, doesn't take away the tendency to do those things again. That's still there. And therefore, it may come out again, just like Daksha. Daksha, who was the father of Diti and Aditi and others. He offended Lord Shiva. He lost his head, literally, and he got a goat's head. And he approached Lord Shiva and spoke to his goat's head, his big mistake, and he was forgiven. So the reaction's gone. But the tendency wasn't gone. So when he took birth again, he did the same thing with Narada. Offended Narada. So how do you take tendency away? That's what Krishna does. Read carefully Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, text number 11. And that residual tendency, jnana dipena bhasvata, aham agyana jam tamaha. Agyana, ja, born from ignorance. When ignorance covers the living entity, he'll still do bad things. Krishna personally takes that away for the devotee. Now, in the case of Shishupal and Dantavakra, Krishna took away their ignorance and gave them liberation. It's described, final, the liberation of Shishupal, that he attained Sayuja. Again, Vishwanath very kindly explains, in this case, no, it's Jiva Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita, which could be Rupa Goswami in Laghu Bhagavatamrita says, in this case, in the case of Jai and Vijay coming as Shishupal Dantavakra, it means they resumed their position close to Krishna, that kind of Sayuja, not literally the absolute Sayuja. That's what Rupa Goswami says. How we know any of these things without our acharyas? And how do they know those things? From their pure devotion. It's illuminated within their heart. Chant good japa and read Prabhupada's books and commentaries of our acharyas, and the combination of the two in so many things. But essential is to let go of the bodily conception of life, otherwise it won't go in. You'll think, well, how's that possible? You use the binary processor of the mind that has contamination, and it's going to bounce. Or one may doubt, or one may misunderstand, or all kinds of things. So the mind needs to be cleansed of the material conception, because conceptions of life are carried in the mind. Just like the air carries aroma. Conceptions of life are carried in the mind. And those conceptions of life transport us to whatever our next destination is, and dictate how we perceive. We were discussing this yesterday, and the day before yesterday. We perceive reality according to the filters. And filters of our past experience, which means guna and karma. That's how we see reality. Scientists know that. Like, here's some data. One scientist reads the data this way, another scientist reads the same data another way. And the data doesn't change, the perception of the data changes. They read it this way, that way. So how do you get reality that's reality? It's unfiltered. Mantra. Mind that becomes cleansed and freed from material conceptions. And what's the symptom? Prasannatma. Brahmabhuta. Prasannatma. Next. Sasochati nakanksati. 3. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. Those are 3. Happiness within. Next, on the strength of that happiness within, not hankering for or lamenting anything that's temporary. And then 3, all living entities, seeing them equally. That doesn't mean you don't see differences, but you see the spirit soul within. Because the differences are resting upon something, and that's the spirit soul. And the conditioning of the spirit, so you can recognize there's the modes of nature, there's this one, there's that one, and there's the spirit soul. Samak sarveshu bhuteshu. And from that Brahmabhuta, or realization of the soul position, one may mad bhaktim labhate. Labhate means obtain or attain. One attains real bhakti. We're doing the practice bhakti right now. And that's good. And then it's meant for purification so that we can attain pure bhakti, because bhakti is pure. Mad bhaktim labhate param. Parabhakti. So Diti had that capacity. It was said in previous verse by Kashyapa about her. So Maitreya is describing her contentment beyond her expectation. Because she had an experience. Now she's being told, your 2 sons will be liberated, and your grandson will go back to Godhead. And during his lifetime, be this wonderful, pure devotee with these qualities and characteristics. Thus ends chapter 14. Any discussion?
So that the demons are killed by Krishna or Vishnu, so they get some kind of liberation. But like the enmity towards Krishna, how does that disappear?
It depends. The Sayuja Mukti, it doesn't. It just merge, and that's not permanent. So it depends. Then let's take the example of Putana. She achieved Goloka because of that little mood of maternal affection, which Krishna accepted, and so she got that service. Putana had two brothers, Baka and Agha, and they achieved the Sayuja Mukti, which is not a permanent situation. So it depends. If there's even some devotion, Krishna is very kind. He accepts it. No, then it's the neutral state.
So the unity part will be not just a Putana in that case.
Say it again slower.
The unity, like that she was trying to come and see Krishna.
Who?
Putana.
Yeah.
So what in that consciousness?
Well, it was two things. When she saw the beauty of Krishna and some maternal affection was also there. But the other was predominant. Let me kill him. So Krishna accepted her appreciation of his beauty and her maternal affection towards him. Pretty unique. Don't imitate Putana. Okay? Regarding the statement? Say it again slower. What just the last part? No. Would you like different? Prabhupada was asked, when it is said da-da-da-da-da about generations, what does that mean? What kind of liberation? Prabhupada's answer, that living entity will get the opportunity in their next life to engage in devotional service because devotional service is from the liberated position. And they can say yes or no. That was Prabhupada's answer. It's not like that's the only answer, but that was, in that situation, that was his answer. To have the opportunity to engage in devotional service like you do and say yes, that's the liberated platform. by the mercy of Krishna. You're welcome to the platform of liberation. That's devotional service. Now, our consciousness is not there, but it's the platform of liberation. We're getting tons of mercy. And we only have a little thimble instead of like a big reservoir to capture it.
So for the illusory energy to ultimately influence of the illusory energy to subside and the living entity to be reinstated in the in its own glorious position as the pure spirit soul. We hear repeatedly again and again about hearing about the transcendental nature of Krishna's
And his
birth
devotees.
and activities
And his devotees.
and his devotees.
Yeah.
It is the method. So, and then ultimately invoking the mercy of Krishna, and only at that point of time one can come to the position of, even
Because Krishna pulls that Maya away. We're dependent. We can't like get Maya to go away. Krishna has to withdraw that influence. He can do it, but we don't want it. That addresses your question?
yes, because the word liberation is used now. You were explaining that liberation means coming to the point of engaging in devotional service in that manner.
Okay, so now then engaging in devotional service, what does that mean? And then there's sadhana, bhava, and prema. So it means that, moving towards the prema position, that kind of devotional service. Okay? Huh?
Another question regarding the point that devotees feel by Krishna attaining the same kind of liberation as a person who are performing the sacrifices and the austerities, if I understand that correctly. So my question is, in this world, we see that people who are following the law are treated differently by the Justice Department than the people who are violating the law. So how do we understand those persons who are filled by Krishna attaining the same kind of liberation as the ones who are doing austerities and sacrifices?
Well, it's not the same as, but Prabhupada would sometimes liken it to the head of a government can go into a jail and grant amnesty for somebody that's in jail, a pardon of their prison sentence. It's a power that they have. Now, it doesn't mean that the person that they now released is going to be a good man after he's released. That's in the worldly sense. But Krishna has that power. Well, if Krishna, next question, if Krishna has that power, then why doesn't he let everybody out of jail? He's got the power. But there's a reason why the jail is there. It's to prevent people that are criminal lawbreakers from intruding on the lives of those who are abiders. They're not put out of existence. They're given a place to live over there in jail, and maintained by the state. But the head of state can pardon them. So the head of state that power needs to be used with discrimination, not just go in and open up all the jails. Okay, everyone's pardoned. Okay? No, she has something. You have something? Okay.
In Damodar Ashtakam, there's a line that give devotion by heart to life. Love for Krishna. And then in some purpose it's written that in this life only
Yeah.
So what exactly that means?
What exactly does which one mean?
In this life when we go back to God, we should try.
Okay. Short answer. The, the author of that Damodar Ashtakam is expressing the mood of pure devotion. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said the same in his Shikshastaka, as Damodarastaka, same thing. Pure devotion. For us, we're not there yet. It's good for us to desire to go back to Godhead. Not just birth after birth is fine. Whatever you wish. Devotional service, please. It's good to want to go back to Godhead. And when one becomes purified by that hankering and aspiration and connection with Krishna through wanting to go back to Godhead, the pure devotee can then say, you know what, Krishna, if you want me to stay here and serve you, I just want service. So from our position, it's good. This very lifetime, finish your business, go back home. Here's a question in the front. You're responding further on her question? Something else? Okay.
You said she does between unfiltered reality and personal truth. And when we approach the master, we approach it with some focus. But there's got to be something beyond just this bottle of the mind.
Well, you may have to do a battle for a while. We don't submit. We have to battle. But the effectiveness of the battle is surrender. Because, you know, from Bhagavad Gita, you know from your experience, the mind is very powerful, balavat, strong, obstinate. No. Yes, no. Please, no. I'll do anything you want, but just please leave me, give me peace. No. Krishna. So that the mood of effort and seeking mercy at the same time, not just seeking mercy or not just effort. Calling for mercy and making the proper effort, striving by right means. And when Krishna sees, oh, she doesn't just want like freedom from the turbulence of her mind. She wants me. Oh, okay. Then we can cross beyond. Maya me tam tarantite. Small thing, surrender. Krishna's happiness, not just my relief of the struggle with my mind. You know, it rolls off the tongue very easily. It's another thing to accomplish it, but that's the principle. Bhakti. Krishna is to be pleased. Okay, and ends. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Bhagwan